What's going on, America? This is Kevin in Kevin's Corner. And like most blacks in America, I was born and raised as a Democrat. So, it's quite shocking to a lot of people when I tell them now that I vote Republican. They're like, man, dude, how could you vote Republican as a black man? I mean, we supposed to vote Democrat. They can't understand it. It boggles their mind. They're perplexed. They're discombobulated. To them, it's ridiculous. How could you be born and raised one way and then eventually be influenced to do something totally opposite of what you were born and raised to do? And I think the answer is this. It is easier and more impacting when someone has been born a certain way, raised a certain way, believe a certain way from birth, then later on gets introduced to an alternative to the way they've been thinking all their lives. So it makes it a little more impacting and believable, because now what happens is I wouldn't have made that switch for nothing. I understand the Democratic Party. What I didn't understand is conservative voting. I didn't understand conservative values. I didn't understand conservative policies, none of that stuff, because all I was introduced to was the Democratic way of thinking, voting, all the things that justified why we should vote Democrat. See, if you were to confront somebody who was born and raised as a Republican and never knew both sides, you could argue, well, dude, you can't tell me nothing because you was born that way, you believe that all your life. So I'm not shocked that you vote Republican, because your mom and your dad were Republicans, their mom and dad were Republicans. They sent you to a conservative school, you grew up in a conservative neighborhood. You could justify that, you could argue that. But when you have someone that their whole background goes contrary to the way that they vote or believe now, the person has comparisons. So when you look at the people that are walking away right now from the Democratic Party, I was watching their videos, and many of them by nature was liberal. By nature, in the heart, they were just straight snowflakes. I mean, it was a winter storm going on in the heart. They want to save everybody. They want to just, we have to help the world. But at some point, they realize that the Democratic Party's agenda is not really rooted in humanitarian roots. So once they start seeing the corruption, the deception of the Democratic Party, they decided to switch parties or walk away from the Democratic Party, which goes directly against their own internal nature. But now their mind has been open to a different way of thinking. So now what has happened is, it's not that they're being influenced by, Republicans or conservatives. And even if you want to make that argument, everybody is influenced one way or another when it comes down to your thinking. But where it's important is how you use your intellect and your reasoning to decide which influence makes more sense. And the people that are walking away are now starting to rid themselves of all the emotional reaction and response and say, let me look at the two. Let me compare the two. These policies make sense. What they're saying, what they're doing, what they're trying to do makes sense, even though it goes against my internal temperament. That is why when people walk away and they give their testimonies, they give their videos, it means a lot more than somebody who's been born and raised as a conservative and they're telling you about conservative values. People who have seen the other side are the ones that have the right to say, that is why I'm no longer over there. It's kind of like a guy who's been to war versus a guy who ain't been to war. I don't care how much a guy watches videos. I don't care how much a guy reads books about war, how much training he goes through to go to war. If he's never been to war, he can't tell you about war. But that guy who comes back from war, he's like, dude, war is hell. It's a mess over there, man. And the guy who's listening, he might can't relate. Yeah, I'm sure it is. But when I get there, they ain't never seen the likes of me. I'm going to be like Rambo up in that mud, like, pow, but ain't that ow. Pow, da dang. And then they get there and they're like, I want my mama. I don't want to die. See, it's because of the experience that the other person had on that side gives them legitimacy to talk about why they're no longer there. So all of the people that are walking away from the Democratic Party, including myself, because see, when people come at me with all of that, man, you a sellout, man, you Uncle Tom. I'm like, no. See, you're not talking to a guy who was born like Carlton. Hey, Will, I'm not Carlton Banks here. All right, you're talking about a guy who experienced the other side, okay? I experienced the other side. I know what the other side is like. I know how they think. I know how they vote. I know how they act. That is why I am, and other black and minorities that walked away from the Democratic Party is the most dangerous people to the Democratic Party, because we have the inside track on what influences other minorities to stay on that plantation. We have the ability to sit back and talk to them and say, dude, I used to be just like that. I know about why we all voted Democrat. I know how they would come into our neighborhoods and tell us nice, sweet things and court us during election time, and then we never see them again. They were that deadbeat dad to come around every Christmas, drop off a little Tonka truck, and then you don't see them the rest of the year. So they can't tell me nothing about you should go back to the Democratic Party because I know too much about them. All right, that is why I walked away. I've seen both sides. So if you really want to make a difference out there when it comes down to voting, anybody that has ever experienced the other side of the two voting options, been Democrat and now switched over to conservatism, tell somebody, get out there and just share it. Like, dude, man, you can look, you know me, okay? You grew up with me. You know I ain't crazy. I'm not an irrational person. That's how I have talked to some of my friends. It would be one thing if we grew up and they was like, Kev always was kind of crazy, man. But when we grew up and they can deduce that I'm a sane, practical, reasonable thinking person, then they have to come to the conclusion, what was it that made you decide to look at these situations and say, I'm done. I'm walking away from that party. Well, what happened is I started to see how corrupt the one party was and how they were manipulating us. I talked to a friend of mine who, is very sensitive by nature. They are liberal by nature. But what they had to do is start saying, you know what, I'm going to have to allow reasoning and logic to trump my temperament when it comes down to voting. Okay, I gotta suppress the snowflake that always wants to rise up and run free. Okay, it always does. It just wants to rise up and just run free. But they had to suppress that and subject it to reasonable, rational thinking. And that's what we need to do in our society and when it comes down to voting. So anyway, you've been listening to Kevin's Corner. That's right, I was born and raised as a Democrat, and then in the dead of night, I said, it's my chance to escape, y'all. I was gonna take off right now. Don't you tell on me, don't you? And as soon as I took off running, of course, a lot of black people, massa, him running, but they ain't caught me yet, and they're not. Anyway, God bless you. Find me on Facebook, find me on Twitter, check me out Wednesday nights at 7:30. And also, check out Extreme Tees, my sponsor. Great paraphernalia. The link's in the bottom. If you want to support Kevin and Kevin's Corner, there's also a link in the bottom. Do that as well. And we will see you next time in Kevin's Corner. Share this video, like it, and comment, all that good stuff. Don't forget to hit the notification button. And we'll see you next time in Kevin's Corner.